should you get and build Mantra? Short answer. If you have Tragodia. Probably yes. If not, probably no. Long answer. This entire video.
Hello, Doctor. I did not mean to disturb your rest. But Amir wants to remind you, there is still work that needs doing.
あなたの許可は乱用しない。これ以降、私は傾聴に徹する。
Elite Operator Mantra. A very tall figure from Sargon. Where some intel even suggest she came from a noble background. Her history in Rhodes Island goes way back. She first joined Babel, Rhodes Island predecessor at Kortzit's invitation. She fought in the Kazdal Civil War, and became one of Rhodes Island's first elite operators after the war. She is also longtime leader of the 3rd Special Operations Squad, where Elysium is one of its members. Among all the operators here, Mantra has a really unique ability. Simply put, she can do telepathy. And this ability can significantly help operators coordinate when radio communications are difficult or inadvisable. Makes her an indispensable part of many missions. Also, she uses this telepathy to keep up with Rhodes Island's latest gossip. Alright, the long-awaited elite operator is finally here. And she is our newest 6-star primal caster that focuses on nervous impairment and also has many abilities that are tied to paralysis. As you may already know, this caster's main job is their ability to inflict element injury and inflict element damage. Under the right circumstances, they can deal very devastating hits, mainly because elemental damage is still pretty much considered true damage, where you will rarely come across an enemy with element resistance. But the thing is, their own ability to inflict element injury is not good. So partnering them with a dedicated element injury enabler is often a must. And in Mantra's case, that enabler is Tragodia. However, with that said, among other primal caster, Mantra is definitely the least to rely on element enablers. But as I said in the short answer, having Tragodia is a big factor on whether or not you should get Granny. Moving on, this is her general stats. Kinda similar to what you often see from a 6-star core caster. Not much to speak here honestly. She got average to high attack, lack defensive stats, and average to high DP cost. Now let's see her talent. Mantra's talent 1 interestingly works with paralysis, not the element injury that causes it like a typical primal caster. Anyway, this talent makes it so that, if the enemy triggers their paralysis stack, they will instantly get hit by elemental damage. For elites and bosses it doesn't really mean much, especially without attack buff. But normal enemies might get one-shotted, or at least depleted a good portion of their HP. This first talent also has a second effect, where if the enemy triggers a paralysis, there's a chance that the enemy won't consume the paralysis stack. It sounds quite game-changing, but the trigger chance is extremely low. Getting a double 6-star in Enfield is probably more likely. As for talent 2, Mantra will mark the closest red box from her position. And now any enemies who enter from it gets 1 stack of paralysis. A simple but quite useful talent. I guess you can also consider this as 1 free damage from her talent 1. Alright, this is her potential upgrade list. You got stuff that will reduce her cost, reduce her redeployment time, increase attack, and enhancing her talent 1 by increasing attack buff and second effect trigger chance. But overall, she's already fine without extra pot. Moving on, this is her module. Granny got the X module, which means she gets damage multiplier when hitting someone under all kinds of elemental burst, and increasing her HP and attack stats. As for the upgrade, it will enhance her first talent. Sadly nothing new. In stage 2 it will increase the damage multiplier of enemy who consumed their paralysis stack. and stage 3 will both increase the damage and the chance of not consuming a paralysis stack. It's a fairly good module to increase her damage output. But generally, the stage 1 effect is the most impactful one. Especially to increase the element damage coming from her. Stage 2 and 3 is just a basic damage increase, which shouldn't make much of a difference in general content. And the second effect of not consuming paralysis stack is still low as hell, to be considered worth the upgrade. Well, I suppose it's good news for you who have low resources, since just unlocking the module is the bare minimum. Moving on, let's talk skills. Her skill 1 is the typical primal caster first skill. In the next attack she will deal critical damage. And also some of the damage will also inflict element injury. But if she hits someone and a nervous impairment burst, she will deal additional damage as element damage. Well, her skill 1 is honestly pretty mid, unless you got some crazy external buff happening. So if you already unlock it, use her other skills. Now her skill 2. Her attack interval will be reduced, and each hit has a damage multiplier. And much like a chain caster, the attack can chain, or jump to 3 enemies. But the jump attack has a lower damage. Additionally, some of the damage dealt inflict nervous impairment. And if she hits an enemy under its burst effect, she will deal additional damage as elemental damage. Overall a pretty good DPS and swarm cleaner skill. While you typically want to partner her with Nervous Enabler, to make the most out of her damage. But if you don't have someone else, it's her best skill if you want her to be independent, inflicting nervous impairment burst or paralysis on her own. However, much like the case of other primal caster, the nervous impairment came from the damage dealt. Meaning she will take a very long time to deplete the element circle of someone with high resistance. Last but absolutely not least, her skill 3. Aside from the basic stuff like stat buff and multiple targeting, the other part of this skill looks wordy and complex. But basically, anyone inside Mantra's range will get their paralysis stack limit reduced from 3 to only 2. Adding more paralysis stack beyond this point will result in Mantra dealing burst damage, which is elemental damage, and where most of this skill damage came from. In fact, the damage from this skill is so big, I struggle to find a boss who can survive to showcase it properly. By the way, the additional hit from Paralysis Overflow can actually jump to another enemy, giving this skill slightly more way to handle crowds. And as you might have guessed, since this skill relies on paralysis, it makes Tragodia a very amazing partner for Mantra, especially with his skill 3. But while having Tragodia is a massive upgrade when using Mantra, if you don't have Tragodia, this skill actually lets Mantra forcefully apply paralysis to an enemy by simply having an operator inside her range activate their skill. And this should work for auto activation skill. Passive skill. And skills that lets operators switch between modes. Sadly, this forced paralysis only works 3 times. And Mantra's own skill activation counts, so it left you with 2 more skill activation for this forced paralysis. And with this fact, Make sure to let your enemies enter Mantra's skill range first before activating the skill, so you don't waste the forced paralysis. Other than damage, this skill also has invisible reveal utility, which can be very useful, like in her debut in chapter 16. As for downsides, well, the skill cost is almost reaching a high category. But if you consider what this skill does, it sure isn't a problem. However, the biggest problem is that as soon as you run out of way to inflict more paralysis, or having none at all, this skill becomes a very basic arts DPS skill. Might still be able to kick elite's ass, but definitely not a boss killing skill. As for skill mastery priority, definitely go with skill 3 first, where her biggest damage potential came from. Other than that, skill 2 could be your next option. Especially if you're looking for Mantra to be more independent, where she doesn't need a nervous impairment enabler. Skill 1 is pretty much a skip. It could potentially be a better option than skill 2 in some rare situations. But for what it normally provides, and the expensive cost of 6-star mastery, I don't recommend you touch skill 1. And for her base skill, Mantra will increase trading post efficiency. Further increase the effect for every facility with elite operators in it. It's the facility that counts, so sadly you can't chug your whole elite teams in the same place. It must be one elite operator in one facility. By the way, Mantra should count, placing her in the trading post, and that trade post will instantly get that 2% increase. So ladies and gentlemen, that is why you should consider Mantra. An amazing damage dealer under the right circumstances, who also makes the most useful crowd control debuff in the game lethal. Sadly, if you watch this on her debut, right now it is highly recommended you skip Mantra, especially F2P players. Because after this we will have a strong limited banner. And if we put aside what comes next, while Mantra is still a very reasonable operator to get. But like I said in the short answer, if you want her, make sure you have Tragodia first. She indeed doesn't rely on the injury enabler as much as other primal caster. But you pretty much still need Tragodia to make the most out of Mantra. However, some can even argue Tragodia alone is enough, and Mantra as a damage bonus is not necessary. She is also a rather complex unit to use, and her best skill is in skill 3. Which is not exactly newbie, or IS mode friendly. That should be all. Adios.